Hello, I had a page on Facebook ask a question of people who follow it. Do you believe that everything happens for a reason? For or some younger people, it may not appear to be so. But for me personally, I think there is a lot in this world. There's a reason for everything. It may not always be the reason we believe it to be, but I think if you believe it happens, things happen for a good reason. You can mold circumstances to your benefit to create motivation, inspiration when difficulties do come. When I was born back in the early 60s, I was born in a hospital whose basement was below the water level, meaning that it was kind of dug out of the street. It went above the street, but where the power was below. The day I was born, the basement got flooded and the power went out. And I don't believe they had any generators. So hospital personnel and fire department went house to house to people who lived on the street to get flashlights and candles and whenever they could to help light up rooms in the hospital where people were having surgeries or women were having babies, or just to light up a room where someone may be recovering or someone had been admitted. When I was born, the doctor took me out with instruments that bruised the skin around my eyes, and as most people are aware, skin around the skin on a baby is easily bruised, and it looked like I had two black eyes. My dad, who was from Ireland, made the crack that he was born a fighter. Little did he know that it was kind of a look into what my life might be. About 8 years later, he was involved in a car accident in which he was a fatality. And I was never given the details of the accident, but I came to find out later on that he was coming home from a work party and the tire blew out. I also found out almost 50 years after the fact that it's quite possibly he'd been drinking too. So, on top of not really having all the information on my dad for most of my adult life, and kind of guiding myself, it was very hard for me to connect in any way in my teen years, and I started drinking more heavily. I started drinking at 11, started doing it to be socially accepted at about age 16, 17, and I let it get out of control I became an alcoholic. And for about 7 or 8 years, I was practicing being an alcoholic. One day I decided to quit drinking. And I got myself into rehab. I did it outpatient. The counselor I had was fantastic. One of my favorite athletes was an alcoholic locally. His name was Bob Probert. And he was battling staying sober. And about 3 months into my counseling, he had never done any sort of newspaper interview, but he did one talking about his recovery. Well, him being my favorite athlete, me being in my mid-20s, I found some inspiration from it. Hey, if he can do it, I can do it. So I went with gusto. I've been recovering 28 years. About 15 years into my recovery, I'm not sure if Bob had retired, but they were doing a story on him on the Canadian News Channel here in Detroit, or Canadian CBC. They were doing the game, and in between periods, they had an assistant coach who did a video during the time in which Bob had been drinking, and he wanted to do a video to show him what he was messing up with his career, a high-paying career in the spotlight, anything anyone with in a normal walk of life would dream doing, making millions of dollars, having fans, living the easy life. If it could be, as a fan, in a fan's view, that's the way you would look at it. Well, they showed the video they made for Bob on TV. And it stopped me in my tracks, because he was showing all this different stuff. And I had remembered when I was about 21, Bob had been drafted. And on my 21st birthday, a friend of mine took me to a local brewery called Stroh's. And they had something called the Stroh's House. You could go in there and you could drink beer for free. I was still drinking at the time. I was 21, and I took full advantage. The next day, I saw a short article about how his dad had died. He had been a Windsor, Canada cop, and I kind of buried it, but in the video they showed his dad's gravestone, and the thing that blew me away was his day of death was my 21st birthday. Now, going back maybe 15 years or so, about 2 years in my recovery, I was fortunate enough to meet Bob in a restaurant. And Bob was not sober. He was still battling it. And the person who introduced me said, "This guy's your biggest fan." I happened to be wearing his jersey when I walked into the place of business. And him and another Red Wing said, "Would you like to sit with us? We're going to be sitting in a booth." And for me, it was a thrill of a lifetime to meet an athlete that I so admired for his ability. He was my favorite player. I mean, anyone who follows sports, if you have a chance to meet someone you wished you could be, you certainly would do it. And so I sat down with him, and for about, one of the questions he asked me was, "So you're a fan? What makes you that way?" And there had been an article, the article in the paper that had been written about him struggling with alcoholism. I said, I love your play, but I admire your strength for coming out being with your struggle about alcoholism. I'm an alcoholic, and you're the reason why I quit drinking. Well, for about half an hour, he offered a lot of encouragement and a lot of positive things. And one thing he asked me was my recovery date, and I knew he was kind of full of baloney, and he goes, "My recovery date is 1 year, 1 day behind you. I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat your clean time." And I knew, even though I knew it was kind of a thing, I knew he was trying to encourage me. So I said, no matter what, I will never drink again. Well, seeing that grave snow 15 years later and having not taken a drink, it made it very clear to me that there's no way I could ever drink. It was kind of kismet. And in between that time that I met him and the time I saw the video, about 8 years after we met, my first day on a job at a hockey rink, he was on the ice with 2 kids. It was my first day on the job. And me and my boss were walking down, and he goes, "I'm not going to get you on the Zamboni today, but I just want you to watch what's going on." Well, I didn't know it was him out on the ice. As we're seeing by the doors, Zamboni's getting ready to go out on the ice. Guy skates up, and it's Bob. And he says, "What the hell are you doing here?" I kind of laughed. I said, "It's my first day on the job." My boss had played minor league hockey with Bob. He was a little surprised that Bob knew who I was. So afterwards, after I met Bob again, I had to explain how I knew him. Well, Bob also asked, "Are you still clean?" And at this point, I'd had about 10 or 11 years sober. And I said, "Yeah, this, told him how much." He goes, he just kind of skated away. As he started to skate away, he put his thumb up and he said, "This guy's good." So there are so many things in this life. If you don't look at what matches things up and what your purpose is, and how sometimes life can direct us in ways to find a higher calling. I'm working on almost 30 years of recovery time. I now volunteer with a few different nonprofit groups because what he did for me changed my life. I don't know if down the road someone I help I'll touch so profoundly, but I believe that there is kind of a connection between everybody, not just people we like, people we dislike. and the way we react to them can affect them in such a way that we can help them get to where they want to be, or we can add to frustration of what they already have and they're never able to get out of their rut. But that is my story of one incident where I connected with somebody and there was a purpose behind everything, and it started out with me deciding to change and then realizing that my favorite athlete was trying to change, then meeting him and fortunately he was able to encourage me. I maintained it. I ran into him again. He reinforced it. I saw the video and that did wonders for me, because seeing his father's gravestone, knowing what that meant, and he and I were very similar people in the fact that we both lost our fathers early in life before we had a chance to figure out what we wanted to be. Made a lot of bad choices and then found a way to redeem ourselves. And I'm not sure if I could have done it without him and several of the other people who reinforced what started. So yeah, I believe that there is a purpose behind things.